Hey everyone, in this video we are going to set up Adobe Stock and Adobe Experience Manager Assets integration introduced in AEM 6.4.2. Note that this integration requires an enterprise Adobe Stock plan and AEM 6.4 with Service Pack 2 installed. To perform some of these operations, you might need admin permissions on AEM, Adobe I/O console and access to your admin console. I'm using AEM 6.4 GA version. Let's get started. From your AEM homepage, click on Tools, Deployment and select Packages. Let's upload and install the AEM 6. Service Pack. You can find the downloadable link for the Service Pack along with this video. Browse to find the Service Pack and install it. Note that it might take a few seconds for the installation to complete. As an additional step, you are required to reinstall the Adobe Stock package. At this point, we have taken care of all the prerequisites for this integration. Let's navigate back to AEM homepage and click Tools, Security and select Adobe IMS configuration. Nearly all Adobe services require your application to authenticate through the Adobe Identity Management System to receive client credentials. The client credentials determine the access and permissions granted to your application. Any API that accesses a service or content on behalf of an end user authenticates using the OAuth and JSON Web Token standards. Let's create a new Adobe IMS configuration. For cloud solutions, let's select Adobe Stock and then create a new certificate. Provide a name for your certificate and then click Create. To retrieve the access token, we should add the certificate's public key to the technical account on Adobe I/O. We will be covering this in our next step. Click OK and download the public key to your drive. Open a new tab and navigate to Adobe I/O console. Make sure to select your organization and you should be able to see a list of existing integrations. Let's create a new integration to access Adobe Stock API and click Continue. Under Creative Cloud Solutions, you should be able to see Adobe Stock Service Account Integration if the entitlement is added to your organization. If your application makes API requests to a service on behalf of itself or an enterprise organization, you will need to configure a service account integration. Service accounts are similar to user accounts, but they are unique to your application and have additional security requirements. You can also check out the documentation for Adobe Stock API here. Select the Service Account Integration option and then click Continue. Provide a name and description for your integration. For Public Keys certificate, let's browse and upload the public key we saved to our drive from AEM. For Adobe Stock configuration, you can either use the default Adobe Stock configuration or create a new configuration within Adobe Admin Console and it should show up under the license dropdown. For this particular account, we have two additional profiles created. Let's open our Admin Console in a new tab and under Products and Adobe Stock, you should be able to view the user, admins and permissions for your Adobe Stock profile. Under Permissions, you have an option to add references that need to be provided every time you try to license an asset. These references can be optional or mandatory. Let's open the mandatory references and you can notice that project name and cost center references are added as mandatory. Let's also check out optional references used for this configuration. We have kept the country reference as optional. Let's navigate back to our integration window and select the Adobe Stock configuration and click Create Integration. Upon successful integration, you can click to view the integration details. From the JWT tab, copy the payload details. Switch back to your Adobe IMS window and then click Next. Paste the JWT payload in the payload field. Select and copy the IMS authorization server URL from the payload. Provide a title for your IMS technical account configuration and then paste the authorization server URL. Switch back to the Adobe I/O console and copy the client secret and API key details and paste the values into the corresponding fields in your IMS configuration window. Click Create to complete the configuration. Select the configuration and perform a health check to make sure you receive the token for your IMS integration. Now we need to set up cloud services for Adobe Stock AEM integration. From your AEM homepage, click on Tools, Cloud Services, and then click on Adobe Stock. Click on the Create option to create a new stock configuration. Provide a title and select the Adobe IMS configuration we created in the previous step. Make sure to select the environment as production. Stage environment option will be removed in the next AEM release update, and it is recommended by Adobe to use a production environment. For licensed asset path field, you can select the /content/dam path. This field is part of an upcoming release, and for 6.4.2 it is not relevant. Select the locale as English and save and close your cloud configuration. At this point, we have successfully integrated Adobe Stock with AEM assets. Admin can assign this cloud configuration to certain users or a group. Open to view the properties of the Stock Cloud configuration, and under User or Group, let's add admins and DAM users. This means users belonging to the following group would be able to license an asset from Adobe Stock and save it to AEM assets. Save your changes and exit the window. Let's make sure that our integration is successful by licensing an asset from Adobe Stock within AEM Assets UI. From your AEM homepage, click on Assets and you can now see an option to search Adobe Stock. For a user who doesn't belong to the group provisioned with the Adobe Stock Cloud service, this option would be hidden. Click on the Search Adobe Stock option and search for stock images with the keyword Christmas. Select an asset and click on License and try to save it. You should now be able to see a window with the mandatory references and optional references we added to our stock configuration. Provide the details for your project name, cost center, and locale. Click on the License option and you have now successfully licensed an asset from Adobe Stock, and you can save the asset to AEM Assets.